2 days later, I arrived at the Haymarket bus station to meet Jeff. I sat on a bench overlooking the car park where the pub had been. On that spot, all those years ago, Jeff had been a tiny soul inside Tanya, my own seed. And now that seed would soon be arriving to catch a bus with me. The intervening time seemed to collapse. Jeff arrived and sat on the bench next to me. "Hi, Mark. You and Dad used to drink in a pub on that spot, didn't you? The Haymarket, wasn't it?" I shuddered. Another opportunity to have that conversation. But it was all too much. The thing was just too huge. Yeah, was all I could manage. Thankfully, the bus pulled in right away and covered my awkwardness. We took our seats on the right to get the coastal views. There were only a handful of other passengers, a man with a flat cap and a border collie, and a woman with 2 excited young girls, maybe off to the beach. We sat quietly for some time. I was pleased that he was comfortable with silence. The bus sped up the A1 to Morpeth, where another woman got on with a young boy, struggling with bags full of beach gear. They joined the other family. "Harriet, Maureen, we've got a lovely day for it, eh? Got plenty of sandwiches and that. Flask of tea, of course." "Aye, smashing. Yeah, we've got plenty of food too. It's been ages. How are you doing, pet?" "Aye, canny. Knackered with the bends, mind." She laughed. "Aye, they're always on the go, aren't they? Sit down properly, Michael. I'll be no cake for you." She barked at her son, who was jumping on the seat. The boy obliged. "Sorry, ma'am." The woman carried on chatting, and the children played rock, paper, scissors. The clouds darkened a shade, but it didn't blunt the optimism of the beach party. My Greek friends would have found such a trip in this weather inconceivable. After a while, the glorious sand dunes and the sea appeared. The children were jumping up and down. "We can see the sea, ma'am." Maureen pressed a bell button, and they all tumbled out when the bus pulled in. A while later, Jeff asked, suddenly, "Can I ask you a question, Mark?" "Of course." Are you my father?" I froze rigid, unable to move or speak. Eventually, I managed to turn and look Jeff in the eye. Unable to find any words, I just nodded. Jeff did not look surprised at all. Eventually, I found my tongue. "How do you know?" "Well, I've sort of known for a long time that Jake isn't my real father. I mean, my biological father. I think I worked it out slowly. I heard Mum and Dad rowing downstairs as I lay in bed. Must have been very young. I didn't understand at the time. Later I pieced things together." "And you didn't say anything to them?" "No. I went over in my mind the conversation, but it was too much. I was afraid to hurt them, especially Mum. I suppose I was scared they'd break up. Anyway, I didn't know for sure, but I always wondered who my real father was. I mean, my biological father. Then when you mentioned you used to go out with Mum, something clicked in my head. Also, I guess I felt a sort of connection with you." I marvelled that the lad had kept all this to himself for so long. So long. I also marvelled that Jeff had been the one with the courage to open the conversation. He continued. "I spoke about it with Ruth last night. She sort of knew already, I think. We talked for a long time. She had a lot of therapy when Billy left her. She's pretty wise. It's like this, me and her agreed. Jake is still my dad. He's the one who brought me up. He wasn't perfect, but he was always there for me. He played football with me, took us to the beach, took us on holiday, looked after me when I was sick. Despite everything, I love him. Some words leaked out of me. Yes, that's how it is. You are right. Totally. Jeff continued. I was a bit worried you would want to be me dad. But you don't, do you? You're happy to be a sort of uncle, right? That is perfect. A long-lost uncle who disappeared in the jungle and suddenly turned up one day. Yeah, it's like, I like you, but as a friend, right? Yes, exactly that. Jeff put out his hand for me to shake. Deal? Deal. The bus pulled in and the man with a collie got off. Jeff smiled. We used to get off here, me and me dad. When Mum was working, he would take me places. We had a lot of fun. We never had any money, but we'd always make a nice picnic and get the bus or train somewhere, throw logs off a bridge, play nights in one of the castles, find crabs in rock pools. Suddenly I saw a new perspective. Jake had raised my child for me. While I had been off, seeking my salvation, my friend had cared for my son. I marvelled at how God had taken all our stupidity and, against all the odds, shaped it into something positive. We resumed our discussion on art from the other day, in preference to raking over the past. It was enough for now. The words of the psalm hung in my mind throughout the conversation. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Your rod and staff comfort me. It was very moving to witness the reunion of Jeff and Jake, who had last met 6 months ago. It recalled my reunion with Dad. Both meetings echoing the return of the prodigal son, with a new twist. In my case, I, the son, had squandered the inheritance of atheism and wallowed with the pigs of religion. In the other story, it was a father, Jake, who had been the prodigal, and the son, Jeff, who forgave him, embracing him in loving arms. When Jeff told his father he knew the truth, Jake had wept. A huge weight that had been crushing him for many years had been lifted. The mountain had been moved. The two hugged for a long time. The fault line which ran through their relationship was steadied, if not totally gone. To my surprise, Jake prepared quite a banquet for us in the evening. A bolognese with a decent bottle of red wine, even lemon cheesecake for dessert. The three of us made a nice party, we oldies entertaining Jeff with the stories of our misspent youth. Jake laughed. Hey Mark, do you remember that time we got invited to a party by that weird lass who turned up at the Haymarket? What was her name? Sapphire or something? Emerald, I think. Yes, she was away with the fairies, wasn't she? I think she ended up in some cult. Anyway, we all piled onto the train to Sunderland at closing time. Must have been about 20 of us, wasn't there? Aye, when we got to her flat, she said she'd lost the key and could we help her in. So Weary Davy steps forward and uses his shoe to break a small pane of glass, reaches through the window and opens the door. Jeff asked, "Why was he called Wavy Davy?" I replied, "Well, to distinguish him from Dodgy Dave, of course." It was the 80s, and Davy's lass had persuaded him to get his hair done into a wave perm. It was the time of the new romantics. Loads of people were getting them. He never lived it down with the lads, of course. He suddenly looked a double of Phil Oakey from the Human League. That night in the Haymarket, the whole pub was singing their song. Don't you want me, baby? Don't you want me, oh? Somehow the name just stuck, even though the wave was gone by the next weekend. Jake took up the story. Anyway, Wavy Davy gets us inside this flat. In a council block it was, really rough part of Sunderland. Couple of hours later there's a loud banging on the front door. Emerald looks through the gap and says, "Lads, it's the police." So I tell her to open the door and let them in. We've done nothing wrong. But she says, I kind of got evicted, I didn't pay any rent for like a year or something. They threw us out. But I still had the key, so I let myself back in. I guess they must have changed the lock, eh? Then she fastens the chain on the door. As Jake was speaking, Jeff and I were laughing. Jake had a great way of telling a story, imitating the person's way of speaking to a T. He continued. So, Wavy Davy starts panicking. He's applied for the army, and if he gets in any bother, he's worried they won't take him. He shouts, "Don't open the door, we'll get out the back." And I say, "We're on the second floor, man, don't be daft." He replies, "Not a problem, come on," and leads us into the back bedroom. He pulls the sheets off the bed and starts tying them together. Everyone starts rolling about with laughter and telling him not to be so stupid. But he's deadly serious. He ties the sheets to the leg of the bed and throws the line out the window. Suddenly everyone stops laughing. He grabs a hold, jumps out the window, down to the ground in no time. We found out later he was a great abseiler. He lands with a splash in a small river. The area is covered in trees. He shouts, "Come on lads, it's easy. It's a bit wet, that's all." Meantime, the copper shouts through the door, "Open this door now. I have backup on the way. We will break this door in." So everyone looks at each other, not sure what to do. Then Emerald grabs the rope and goes next. Not wanting to be outdone by a girl, one by one the lads start shunning down the rope, disappearing into the trees. I was the last out, and just as I hit the ground, I heard the door smashing in. Wavy Davy standing there with his tin of lighter fluid, the refill for a Zippo lighter, you know. He squirts the fluid onto the end of the sheets and sets a light to it. Stop the police following. And we leg it into the woods. Somehow we find our way back to the train station. Must have been about 3 or 4 a.m. We crash out and wait for the first train back to Newcastle. Mad as hatters, the lot of us, eh? After we had finished laughing, I asked, "So what's the story with Davy? Bob told me he was nearly killed in Afghanistan. He reckons he had some kind of near-death experience?" Jeff replied, "Aye, they reckon he was brain dead for a few hours, then came back to life. He says he met an angel or something, and was told it wasn't his time yet. It's been in the papers. He spent the last year or so coming back overland, and they reckon he's going to arrive in Newcastle any day. He's raised a load of money for charity. They're going to have some kind of welcome party to meet him." Jake chimed in. "Well, it would be great to see him, eh? But we'll wait until all the fuss has died down." "Yes," I replied. "We don't need the crowds and ceremonies, do we? I don't suppose I'll catch him this time." Jeff retired to his room, leaving Jake and I to discuss how well it had all worked out. "It's thanks to God, isn't it?" Jake said. "It is." He continued. "The dream became clear to me last night. I was lying in bed for hours, mulling it all over, hardly slept. The walled-in area where the people in white habits lived. It's the church, isn't it? I was asked to help build it, but I ran away. What's on the outside of the wall, outside the church, is chaos. Ravenous wolves seeking to tear us apart. We need to stick together. Get healed together, right? I tried my whole life to do it myself. Just doesn't work. I've screwed up big time, and God has offered to forgive me, even though I can't forgive myself. On top of that, things have worked out between me, you and Jeff. He'll have someone to keep an eye on him when I'm gone. It's all far more than I had a right to wish for. What's that parable Jesus tells? The rich man invites his friends to the wedding, but they're all too busy. So he sends his servants out to drag people in from the obscure lanes and under the hedges. That's me, isn't it? Living in some spiritual ditch. On top of what he's already done for us, he's inviting me to the banquet. What am I going to do? Throw it back in his face? I'm really good with words, but what else is there to say? We make it too complicated, right? I'm ready to take the white stone, to get baptised, before these lungs of mine pack up entirely. As if to emphasise his point, he went into a coughing fit. I admit I was taken aback and took a while to respond. Yes. The poet Rossetti said the worst thing about being an atheist is when you're grateful, but have no God to be grateful to. But are you sure? It seems a bit sudden. After his cough had calmed, Jake continued. I'm sure, man. It's not really sudden, it's just I don't say much. And I was lying there in bed. It was like a long, long conversation had finally reached its natural conclusion. I had this image come to me. All these threads in my life, that tangled mess, they were woven together at last. The different parts of me living in separate boxes, they all joined together. Art, philosophy, love, pain. You try and stitch them together with logic and it doesn't work. It's like the strings of a guitar. They need to be tuned before you can play a beautiful song, right? Yes, there's a harmony between faith and reason. We need both. God is rational and God is love. He holds both together and we try to do the same. With atheists, there's a disconnect. Logic in one box, love and beauty in another. I remember this wonderful smile slowly dawning across Jake's face, like a light bulb had gone on. After a moment, he said, Plus, if I'm going to do it, you need to be there. You're going back soon, and I might not see you again. I don't want to whinge, but some nights it feels I'm not going to make it to the morning. I don't know how it all works. It's probably a daft idea. Can you baptise us on Hurley Island in the sea? Jeff used to love going there when he was little. He used to climb in the wooden towers on the causeway. He wanted us to wait until the tide came in, so we'd be stuck on a tower for a few hours. I never agreed, of course. I'm not that daft. Listen, if we do it in the next few days, maybe he can come to the baptism. Well, I'm not a priest, so I can't baptise you myself. Why, what do you mean? You've got the right kit on and everything. I am a monk, but not a priest. Not all monks are priests. But I heard there was a retired Orthodox priest in Wooler, Father Aaron. I can ask him. It's up to him if he'll do it in the sea. There's no reason why not, in theory. I'll try and get hold of him in the morning.